Welcome to this video. I edited my list down to 10 topics so that this wouldn't be too long and I wouldn't ramble on too much, but this time of year I do feel like it's really easy to be inspired. It comes pretty quickly because so much nature is coming to life, and I don't know, I'm just in a better mood generally when the weather is nice. So this is just kind of a rough list of things that I'm trying to think about and learn about as we enter spring. The first thing on my list is handmade sets and props. Specifically, I'm inspired by the photographer Sylvester Mako. Hopefully I said that the right way. I first became aware of his work when I saw the photo shoot that he did for Rama Douaji for her interview with The Cut magazine, for her being the First Lady of New York City. I thought that this photo shoot was extremely inspiring. I thought it was pretty much just perfect in every way and how it was so celebratory of arts, but also I love the trompe l'oeil effect of having cardboard cutouts that are painted, and also just the embracing of letting it be known that things are handmade, not trying to hide it. It's very theatrical, and I think I'm inspired by theater props, hand-painted backdrops. I want to make more props. I want to get more into photography. I'm really inspired by some of his other work as well. So like seeing the Rama Douaji photo shoot led me down a rabbit hole of seeing all of his other work. I did realize that I was familiar with his work because of the Willem Dafoe photographs of him with the house around his head. I didn't realize that that was Sylvester Mako's work, but it turns out he's been doing this for a while, these cool like prop photography series. And yeah, I'm just feeling really excited about the idea of making stuff and coming up with cool concepts for photography, incorporating art pieces, clothing, and set design, basically. And I feel like this also kind of calls to Wes Anderson and everything that he has ever done, which is always emphasizing handmade prop artists and stuff with backdrops, hand-painted backdrops, sets, art pieces, one-of-a-kind stories, if that makes sense. Number 2, the second thing on my list is Vuillard paintings. Hopefully I'm saying that okay as well. Edouard Vuillard, I believe he's a French post-impressionist painter. I never really thought much about him, even though I'm sure I've learned about him in various art history classes and reading art history books. I've been taking oil painting lessons for the past year and a half with the same teacher, Giovanni. I actually have painting lessons later today, so when I'm done with this, I'll head over to that. But anyways, Giovanni has definitely gotten to know me because I keep taking his class, and if we ever like have a chat about art before or after class, he'll recommend artists for me to look into, and he kept telling me that I should look at Vuillard's work because I like patterns. I like to paint patterns in fabric, and it always is exciting to me if there's like an interesting object with like floral motifs or like decorative arts, which if you know my artwork, that makes total sense. I love a patterned tablecloth. I love a patterned vase or whatever, detail oriented, I guess. And so yeah, he told me to check out Vuillard. I feel like I kept forgetting who the artist was, and then finally looked it up when he was telling me, and I definitely thought like, wow, yeah, this is really cool and inspiring, especially his use of light. And I don't know too much about him, but I'd love to get a book and learn more about this artist. Lewis mentioned we think that he might have had some kind of illness that required him to be indoors most of the time, and therefore a lot of his artwork is interiors, and also a lot of paintings of women. Back when he was painting, women were very much staying inside, doing housework and stuff. It's interesting because it's kind of like an impressionist inspired style of painting, but rather than being outside with the study of light, it's inside. Especially the paintings that he makes that feature really interesting patterned tablecloths and clothing. I love those. I love the light. I definitely want to learn more about this artist and take inspiration from his art to try to set up some cool still lifes with fabric that I love and stuff like that. I have to find a book on him. Number 3, kind of relating to the first inspiration of props and stuff, sculpture. I'm feeling still very inspired by sculpture. I feel like I've mentioned this in the past inspiration videos from last year, especially with paper mache, because embroidery and beading and sewing have become my like income, I suppose. It's less of a creative outlet than it used to be, but I am finding a lot of creative fulfillment when I'm doing paper mache and when I'm painting. I want to put more of a focus in my free time of practicing more paper mache sculptures and art pieces because it's just very exciting to me and I want to see where that takes me. I love reusing single-use plastic as materials for this work. It just feels like exciting to be taking trash and turning it into something really cool. And my approach to paper mache now is I'm inspired by cubism and I guess abstracting the shapes of all these different like plastic containers. I'm working on a table right now that's kind of ridiculous, but it's really fun for me and it's going super slow. I do think that my process is going to speed up a lot in the spring and summer because I can let things dry outside, and the quicker the paper mache dries, the faster I can continue to work on it. Whereas in the winter, when it's sitting inside drying, it takes a lot longer. So I'm super excited to continue my paper mache endeavors. And I also was thinking it'd be fun to incorporate like stones and crystals into pieces, sort of like as if they're dangling like jewelry would have charms and stuff. I still have to work out in my head how that would, I don't know, function. Those are just thoughts. Yeah, I'm kind of like also getting back into like rocks and crystals from spiritual stores. Number 4 is less of an inspiration for art or fashion for like my work, but more so just for my life, which is that I want to learn gardening, specifically container gardening, and try to grow vegetables this spring and summer. It has to be container gardening for me because I live in a city and we just have a small backyard area. There are community gardens all throughout South Philly, but I feel like I don't know enough about gardening to take on something like that or spend money on renting a little space like that. I want to prove to myself that I can actually be dedicated to taking care of plants before I do anything like that. Basically, I want to get a book on container gardening, vegetable gardening in cities and stuff. There's a really cool anarchist bookstore in South Philly on South Street called The Wooden Shoe. And I haven't been there in a while, but I need to go because I feel like there's a lot of questions I want to ask them, but I also know they have a great book selection and I feel like they might have something like that because gardening and growing your own food is a form of resistance. Yeah, and I just want to like learn how to produce food, I guess, to grow food. That just seems like an important skill to have. So I want to get a book, give it a proper effort to try to grow maybe like 3 things, maybe like tomatoes, lettuce, and some kind of pollinator flower. I don't know. If anyone has recommendations for Northeast vegetables that I should try first, let me know. Something that's like easy and will keep me motivated to keep trying other things. Even though that's not like a direct inspiration to my artwork, I think that learning about random topics, it might not be an obvious way to get inspired to make art or design clothes and stuff, but somehow there's a magic to learning about stuff that seeps its way into the process of making things, and inspiration works in mysterious ways. So I'm always open to moving outside the boxes that I am used to being in and just trying other things, and I know that that'll make my creativity a little bit more well-rounded. Number 5. This is also a bit of more of a, like an abstract thought or goal, but I just want to listen to more music while I work. I feel like as I've gotten older, I'm a little bit more sensitive to background noises, and depending on what's going on, especially with like construction happening in the city or like, I don't know, dogs barking on our block, it's sometimes too much for me to keep music on. And I don't have Spotify anymore, but I do have a little CD player and I've been collecting CDs. I want to make it more of a practice to put on music while I work and really get in the zone. And I especially want to focus on music that is very poetic with lyrics that really speak to me, because I have a tendency lately towards just listening to instrumental stuff, like jazzy type things, I don't know, kind of like ambient music. But I do also just love poetry and lyrics. The times that I drive in my car, I always play CDs. Lyrics can be so moving, and it reminds me that like that's a huge source of visual inspiration to take words and poems and get inspired to like draw something based off of them and then end up like embroidering them or painting them. I'm interested in actively falling back in love with music the way I did when I was a teenager. It's exciting to me to pursue that and collect more CDs and remember CDs that I used to listen to a lot when I was younger and try to source them and play them while I'm working and stuff. Number 6, this is always on my seasonal inspiration lists, but I feel more than ever drawn to this topic, which is witchcraft. Well, first of all, something I've been dealing with is my cat Uzi has been sick and it's been very, very hard for me. For a month we found out that he has bad kidneys and we've been taking care of it. It's upsetting that he's sick for me, and I'm having a hard time like dealing with the thought of him passing away. And I'm also having a hard time dealing with just the fact that he's sick and that he might be uncomfortable or in pain or anything. And I know that cats don't live forever, but this is something that I just haven't had a realistic understanding of, I guess, because I just kind of thought I'd always have him. But spirituality, I suppose, has been very helpful for me. I feel like I've really heavily gotten back into reading about witchcraft, nature-based spiritualities, and it's comforting for me to focus on that, and it really helps me when I contemplate death and the hard stuff. A huge motivator for me. I've been re-listening to the podcast Between the Worlds by Amanda Yates Garcia, which is a really poetic and beautiful podcast. It gives me tons of inspiration, and she's always like referencing music and books and all kinds of resources that I will also look up, and that kind of helps me stay inspired. In addition to that, with witchcraft and getting back into it, reading about it, listening to people talk about it, it reminds me that a big aspect of practicing magic and being really intentional is activism, and I do feel like that's a little bit lacking in my life right now, and I feel inspired by the activism aspect of witchcraft, and I want to figure out the best way for me to give back. And I know also with magic, like if I want abundance for myself, which I do, then I have to work to strive for everyone having abundance. So part of that for me is like sharing tutorials and stuff online, but I also want to get back into the habit of doing art fundraiser raffles. So that is a huge intention and goal of mine this spring. I definitely want to do one. I'm thinking maybe what's most manageable for me would be like seasonally do a fundraiser raffle in the spring, the summer, fall, winter, and try to just keep doing that. When I set the goal to do it like monthly, I think I get overwhelmed, especially if I have like injuries and stuff. It stresses me out and then I don't end up doing anything. I'm also just feeling very inspired by the symbolism of magic and nature and witchcraft, like the goddess spiral, you know, cosmic egg, like in the springtime, snakes, rabbits, flowers, all of this is connected. I'm just feeling very much so like in the element of magic and embracing that. Whenever I come back to reading about witches and magic and nature, I just feel like I'm coming back to myself. So I know that's a really important part of my life. Times when it's like farther away from me, I just think I fall into a bit of sadness and even more of a like focus on superficialities and stuff. Anyways, I just want to focus a lot on intention for the springtime. Number 7, also on my list a lot, but I have new pictures to share for it, but I'm still very much so inspired by fabric manipulation, and I want to do a lot of projects that involve cutting up fabric, sewing it back together, doing thrift flip type projects, especially for YouTube, scrap t-shirts and applique stuff. Like I want to keep taking that to other places. I'm also inspired by smocking and gathering, just really cool texture in fabric. I don't have much more to say about that other than it's still very much so fuel for my creativity. I want to maybe even get a bit more avant-garde with my silhouettes when I'm doing this kind of stuff. Okay, number 8 is a humble and sweet category. I'm inspired by pencil drawings. Whenever I see a pencil drawing, or graphite drawing as it's more like technically called, whether it's extremely simple colorful or, you know, heavily shaded and detailed. It really speaks to me, and there's something really nice about pencil drawings and how simple it is to just have a paper and a pencil and make something amazing and beautiful. And I want to challenge myself to do some pencil drawings and not have to always add a ton of color or make things in fiber and stuff like that. I love drawing, so that's a goal of mine. Try to do some pencil drawings. Number 9 is cut work embroidery. I touched upon this a tiny bit in my most recent Patreon Substack video. Basically, I want to learn how to do cut work embroidery. I got myself a secondhand book. I read it. I read a lot of resources online. Like, there's some tutorials on Pinterest that actually seem even more helpful to me. I want to try to make some pieces in this technique. I've made a lot of work that's inspired by this, and also like filet crochet. I haven't actually done proper cut work, and I know that I can. I know that I have the potential to. I think this would get me more excited about embroidery. Not that I'm not excited, I just think it's good to keep things interesting because I've been doing this for a very long time. I can fall back into the same pattern sometimes of doing what's easy for me, and I like to keep myself on my toes and switch it up. The last thing on my list is ecology, which is like a broad topic, and it kind of relates to some of the other stuff that I've talked about in here. I want to learn more about the intelligence of nature. I want to spend time in the woods and by the beach. The more time I spend in nature, it always influences my art and my life in very positive ways. I am at a more peaceful, receptive state when I'm in nature or after I've been in nature. I think it's very necessary for me. And I do want to make work that has something to do with the beautiful systems that are in nature. And part of that, I think, is also like I want to learn more about the different plants and animals that are in my area. Circling back to witchcraft and activism, I also really want to figure out a way to be more active in being an environmentalist, how to actively protect the natural world, plants and animals. Yeah, so whether that is doing art fundraising raffles specifically for environmental groups, or even if it's just like setting an intention to bring garbage bags with us every time we hike so that we can collect trash and stuff, or like joining some kind of group, because I know those exist in Philly. I'm just feeling called to focus my energies on the beauty of the earth, and I really want that to, I don't know, come through in my work. I prefer my work to have more to it than just being something pretty that's fun to make, even though that's fine too, and that's like a good time. There's nothing wrong with that. I do want to have a bigger picture in mind, figure out a way to really like talk about all of this in the work I make. It's hard though, because I feel like my language is more like visuals, and sometimes the words can be tricky. Those are the things I wrote down. That's where I'm at, and I'm very excited to make a lot of stuff. I'm definitely going to have one of those clothes I want to make this spring, even though I tend to like only make one thing off of that list. Those are just really fun for me to make. That'll be more of a like fashion inspirations list. Just a reminder, I do have the Yours Truly artist market in Philly. I'm going to be doing that on March 22nd with a bunch of other artists. And yeah, if you're local, come check that out. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you're feeling a little bit inspired yourself. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll be back soon with another video. Check out my Substack and Patreon for extra videos. I'll try to make one and post one by the end of this week if things don't get too crazy. If all goes well and I'm on schedule, that's the plan. Otherwise, there'll be a new Patreon video next week. Happy spring! Bye!